So welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and to a map which holds a little bit of a special place in my heart because TOL FALAS is one of the first larger scale battles that I showed on Reforged, and also not just because of that, but also mechanically it is quite interesting because it can work out in very different ways depending on how the defenders mainly choose to approach it, because it is usually up to them how the engagements happen. There are two sort of distinct halves to the battlefield that they can fall back to. One, of course, is this settlement over here in the corner, which could be seen as maybe a little bit more defensible from this angle, but you also have to deal with two avenues of attack with these bridges over here that the attackers can also use. And there is also this settlement over here, which is a little less fortified. The attackers have much more direct access to it, but there is only one way in, and also you can fall all the way back to the elevated ground back here on the hills. Usually you'll see the defenders either get split in half or choose one side in particular. And also this time around they're not going to be defending the outer farms because this is a 5v3. So once again we're going to be seeing another battle where the defenders are outnumbered by two armies. So I would expect them to have very high quality armies indeed. And we'll see if that's going to be enough. You know, if they were defending this little outer hamlet over here, I would say it probably wouldn't be, because the attackers could just sort of force their way through with sheer numbers. So it is probably for the best that they are falling back to the higher grounds on the cliffs, harder to reach places where their skirmishers should be very, very deadly indeed. We'll go through the attackers first of all and see what armies we will be seeing lay siege to TOL FALAS. And I believe this is another battle which is somewhat lore-friendly. I don't think this is a battle which actually happened as such, but it is certainly the sort of thing you could see happening. So we have Zaweh, who is going to be playing as the first attacking army, who is going to be Harad. He's got some Haradrim archers here at the front, of course, and the Haradrim spearmen, both of the cheapest Harad units, which you see quite a lot of in 0.96, because for what they are, they cost very, very little, and as cannon fodder they fulfill that role very, very nicely. We've also got some Demons of the Desert. Time and time again we've seen them be very, very lethal if they get into the right position, so the defenders definitely going to have to be on the lookout so that they can't throw their payload into a critical part of the defence. Over here we have some Muhad warriors, which have very low armour values, but they do have a decent shield value. They're relatively cheap, relatively numerous. They're not quite as strong overall as the dismounted Serpent Guard, but they do offer you another line infantry option, which you don't see an awful lot of in 0.96 because usually the spears are brought because they're cheaper, but this time we'll see both, which they're going to need numbers to get through the defenders here, the attackers. Southron Warband, which AP spears very, very useful because obviously as spears you can use them as fodder-like units. But the AP also means that they do have a little bit of bite to them, and particularly seeing as the defending armies are going to be both Gondor and Dol Amroth, should be very, very useful. More Haradrim spears, so more numbers. He has got some Black Serpents, which I think, yes indeed, going to be the General's Bodyguard unit, the Haradrim Chieftain there. We've seen them be very useful in offensive sieges in the past. They're very quick, very swift lancers, obviously capable of doing a lot of damage on the hammer and anvil, but they do need to bide their time because using them too early, the defenders are going to be able to deal with them very, very easily by just keeping their shape and using their anti-cavalry units. Back here, even more Haradrim Spearmen, a lot of fodder units here, a lot of Haradrim Spearmen, more Muhad Warriors, and some Champions of Nafrat here as well, so really the one unit of genuine quality they've got as an infantry unit. But of course all of this is because they have brought the Mumakil, which blows a big hole in the Harad budget, so their infantry is of relatively low quality but very numerous. So the Mumakil is going to be the Mumakil, the Demons of the Desert, and the Champions of Nafrat forming the spine of Zaweh's army. Then we have Dump Truck playing as Umbar, and I believe we have 3 Umbar armies as well as 2 Harad armies, so definitely both of the evil men factions of the south laying siege to this island. We have some mercenary guildsmen, which you don't actually see a lot of as Umbar. Usually you'll see the cheaper, more numerous Corsair warriors, or the much stronger but more expensive Castamir's Legion. But even so, as melee infantry, they will do a job for you, but you do have to bear in mind, of course, mercenaries do suffer that morale malus, which usually Umbar don't suffer too much in the way of morale penalties. More mercenary guildsmen, in fact. He does have the Corsair Savages, which again, seeing as all of the defensive factions lay the armour on pretty thick, their axes could prove to be very, very useful. We also have the Abrazanim Narduzagar. Without the armour upgrade, as you would probably expect from the attackers in this situation, they have to make some cost cuts somewhere. The Narduzagar should do pretty decently in a sustained melee fight though. Cheap Corsair archers as well. We've got some Numenorian Shield Guard, which one of the more expensive units that Umbar can bring on foot, and obviously as spears they are very, very strong. Not necessarily going to be the best at dealing damage though, there's actually 2 units of them there. more Savages, more Narduzagar, so very similar units being used all around. We've got some Avrazani Nardu Tariq here at the back, Macemen. The AP on them should be very, very handy as well, provided they can get into a sustained fight. And then finally, Dump Truck's General is going to be in the Naruna Aru Royal Guard, which obviously as far as an arch unit goes, very, very tough individually. A small unit, but still a very safe place to put your General, especially in the upcoming patch where Spears are going to be more resilient to Cav. And then another unit of Merc Cavalry as well, so some melee Cav. We'll see if the defenders have any Cav. 2 Dol Amroth armies means they could very well have. Meanwhile, the second Umbar army, we have Eothad, again playing as Umbar. Some Numenorian Lancers over here, so again another Lance unit. If they bide their time, wait for some Hammer and Anvil opportunities, could be very, very dangerous to the defenders. Corsair Archers out in front, Corsair Pikemen, which I'm surprised we didn't see in the previous army, because while they are extremely vulnerable to arrow fire, they are also very, very cost effective when you can get them into a melee and they get their pikes down into that phalanx formation. Belagaya Footmen, which obviously in the current patch, spears, basic spears like this, basic human spears, do very little damage, but they can be used as a makeshift pushing unit, so we'll see how they get on there. Corsair Infantry, of course, which are cheap but numerous. Corsair Savages as well. Back here we do have some Castamir's Legion, obviously big fan of the Castamir's Legion, very, very strong. Gondor and Dol Amroth, unless you're talking about their higher tier units, they can't really match Umbar for line infantry in this respect. You can see also some Naruna Aru Sentinels, very strong pike unit, slight shield value as well, so a little bit more resilient perhaps to the defensive archers, which will surely be there, and another general going to be in the Naruna Aru Royal Guard, very popular place to put the general. Then we have the third Umbar army, Y2K86, who has lined up all of his men here to quickly come to the aid of his 2 Umbar allies in the centre. Belagaya Footmen once again. I think this is, yep, all of the Umbar generals going to be in the Naruna Aru Royal Guard. We have some more Castamir's Legion as well, some more Nardu Tariq. This time they do have the armour upgrade, so a little bit more of an investment into his heavy infantry here. Corsair Pikemen as well, only a singular unit though. Nardu Bawi with both the armour upgrades as well. As far as the skirmish archer goes, very, very resilient indeed. They and the Bardian Marksman really sort of typify this sort of unit. Very, very resilient, can upgrade the armour. Warlords of Umbar, as knights, they may very well have a little bit more utility if they're a defensive cavalry. But other than that, they will be used in much the same way as all the lancers we've seen so far. They will have to bide their time. They may be multiple HP, but if they're focused down by defensive skirmishers and the pikes of all of the anti-cavalry units like pikes and halberds keep their shape, they will be more difficult to use, but we'll see. And another unit, of course, pikemen. And then the final offensive army, we have the Steward of Dale playing as this Harad force, and he has got some dismounted Serpent Guard with the armour upgrade, so a little bit more emphasis here on his line infantry. It looks as though he's going to be on his own though, going into that settlement, so he will need a slightly more durable army than his fellows who seem to all be going through the centre. He's going to be the one flanking around, it would appear. Some Trollmen, again, very, very good unit. You scarcely see a Harad army without them unless they've gone really heavy into their cav. Demons of the Desert as well, very similar. And the rest of his army is Muhard units, Muhard Beast Tamers, which I believe, I haven't seen them in a long time, but I believe they're pikemen? Or they might be halberds, actually. I can't remember, but regardless, you know, another phalanx unit which should be very, very useful. Beast Hunters here at the front, so some javelins, a lot of these Muhard tribesmen all across his army, supported by the dismounted Serpent Guard. More Trollmen. As Steward of Dale has done in the past, we're going to be seeing the camels. We have the Muhard Beastmasters, Jav Cav, which again, very good at countering defensive cavalry units, but also their javelins can be used on enemy infantry. And he has got 2 units of those, actually. His general, however, is going to be in the Champions of Nafarat. So now we shall get on to the defenders' positions, and they seem to be clustering around these bridges over here and the higher ground. Starting off with Tic Tac, who is going to be playing as Dol Amroth. He has got some Tirithea marksmen. The stakes are on this side of the bridge, although offensive cavalry could still avoid them because they're not right up against the bridge, so we'll see how they do. But the Tirithea marksmen, obviously. Higher tier armoured archers will be a little bit better in 0.97. At the moment, they're not entirely cost effective to my mind, but considering the circumstances, I would imagine the defenders have got some pretty elite armies, so we'll see. Ethelon Men at Arms, the spine of this Dol Amroth army, they are very basic as line infantry goes. The Castamir's Legion will beat them, as will the upgraded dismounted Serpent Guard. However, they are really here to just make sure the Dol Amroth lines keep their shape, I would imagine. This is the unit which can deal a fair amount of damage to both the Serpent Guard and actually the Umbar forces, and that's going to be the armour piercing from the Athlon Halberdiers. The phalanx should come in very handy as well, provided they aren't outranged by enemy pikes. The Trebuchet is going to need to do a lot of heavy lifting here. It's going to need to get a lot of kills. Potentially its damage output is the highest of all siege equipment, I think. But in practice, they tend to miss a lot of shots if they're not positioned exactly right. So we'll see if Tic Tac can get that sorted out. Belfalas Marines, again, armour-piercing javelins like this, very, very useful if they can get into the right position and they aren't skirmished down. I think 2 units here of the Talon Knights, which obviously multiple HP, very, very strong. Not the most numerous, but so they're going to need to embed themselves into the more numerous Ethelond units in front of them. The Black Swans, which I'm actually a big fan of, the Macemen, they are overall higher in quality than the Nadu Tariq, which are across the field. In practice, I've noticed the Black Swans tend to do a lot better. The AP will also come in handy against a lot of the attacking armies, and then some Dol Amroth cavalry as well, some Swan Knights, and some Tarnostian Lancers, as well as... Nope, that's it, so just some Tarnostian Lancers and the Swan Knights. I don't know. I mean, the Swan Knights are a very good melee cavalry unit, but the Warlords are there, there's Jav Cav. I feel as though Dol Amroth, when you face Dol Amroth, you're always going to bring anti-cavalry units as the attackers. I feel as though Dol Amroth may have been better off actually not going for the cavalry units in this situation. We will see. And then there's also some... Nope, that's the Central Army. I would imagine there's probably some hidden units, like the Nimrodel Rangers. Like, this is a relatively small army, all things considered. But we'll see. Meanwhile, the player who actually didn't send me the replay, I think he sent it to Froggy, who in turn sent me the replay. We have Captain Gervais, and he is going to be playing as Gondor. He's got some Citadel Guard, AP Spears, very, very strong, of course. Guards of Osgiliath, good quality pikeman. Nimlothian Honour Guard, Wardens of the White Tower, a lot of elite units here. More Guards of Osgiliath, as well as some Caer Andros Swordmasters in there. Fountain Guard, all of the good stuff. Caer Andros Marksmen up here on the side as well. They double as pretty effective Swordmaster units in melee, as well as being good at range, which is what really sets them apart from a unit like the Tirithea Marksmen currently. We have some Veterans of Osgiliath, without all of the armour upgrades, just the first level. They make very good line infantry as well. Ramus Ekor Garrison Archers, very good skirmish. Very good option for skirmishing down with enemy archers, purely because they're so resilient. We have some Gondor Archers in here as well. Gondor Spearmen, more Citadel Guard, more Gondor Spearmen, and Gondor Infantry. Again, with just the first level of armour upgrades, but he has got a good mix here between units which are disposable. Ramus Ekor Garrison in here as well, and more elite units as well. Very strong elite core here. Athelian Rangers embedded as well. And then finally, this defensive army over here is a little bit isolated. I'd be interested to see what he does, whether he decides to retreat up this hill, whether he just moves to meet up with his allies over in the other settlement. We have Minhash, also playing as Dol Amroth. Again, very similar, I would imagine, Ethelond Halberdiers. He's actually got some Doran Ernil pikemen as well, which I like that pick. We have some Haven Guard in there, very strong Swordmaster unit, of course, arguably, definitely throwing their hat into the ring to be the strongest unit of that type, although the Temple Executioners probably just edged them out. More Black Swans. We have some more Belfalas Marines as well. More Talon Knights, Tirithea Marksmen once again, Belfalas Marines once again, the Tirithea Wardens, which again, can't really hold a candle to the Gondorian equivalent because they aren't AP, but they are still very resilient. And that's just about going to wrap things up. So I think, based on the amount of time, there will be an initial cut as the attackers start to move their way into position, and this usually is a battle of 2 phases, so there probably will be a pause in the middle as well, where there will be another cut. At least that's my predictions. I think the attackers should probably go on to win this, because 5v3, as always, the attackers always come in with a rather large advantage. They also have pretty decent armies, all things considered, and the defenders need to be real careful, because mistakes can be made en masse on this map, I think. If you don't set yourselves up right, the attackers can use all the varied approaches of TOL FALAS to really good effect. So we'll see. But a cut will be made here as the attackers move their way into position. So the first engagements are beginning, it would appear, and we can see that Minhash has indeed moved to regroup with his allies, so they're going to be defending the settlement up here in the northwest. You can also see that the armies have been mixed somewhat. The Steward of Dale has sent over some of his troops to try and help out, although these Muhad Beastmasters may be getting a little bit too close here, as they were obviously trying to help skirmish down this front line over here, and they were somewhat successful, killing off a few Tirithea Wardens. However, they were always going to get repulsed by archers, so you can see that Minhash has taken up his position on the higher ground over here. The Gondorians are going to hold the centre, which makes a certain amount of sense considering... Well, actually, no, this is going to be Tic Tac's army. The Gondorians are going to be over here, trying to stop the advance across the bridge. You can see that Y2K86 and the Steward of Dale over there, so you can see that Umbar are going to be coming to the aid of Harad coming down this direction. You can see it's a primarily an entirely Dol Amroth defence here in the middle. Two Dol Amroth armies from Tic Tac and Minhash, and in 0.96 Dol Amroth have been described as being a little bit overwhelming. That will of course completely change in 0.97 when their cavalry in particular has been given a bit of an uplift. But also a unit that I missed a moment ago, there are some Knights of the Silver Swan as part of Minhash's army. As you see over here, the Blackroot Vale archers are up here, which is a position I feel as though no one has really used on TOL FALAS in the past, because there is a way to get up here. It is very, very long-winded, right at the back of the settlement over here, so essentially the attackers cannot get to these guys in melee until they have punched right the way through all the defences, and obviously the Blackroot Vale archers are very, very effective at dealing damage from this position. You can see the Corsair archers are now coming in, but they are going to be responded to by the Tirathea marksmen. And this is something that Umbar do have going for them. In terms of a skirmish fight, it's very easy to get value with Umbar's skirmishes, although Aethad needs to be careful that he doesn't go charging into melee with the Corsair archers. That would be a bit of a disaster. He has also sent them forward relatively unsupported, so that means the Tarnostian Lancers are going to be able to get some good value off here, because this is going to be a charge, and there's no way the Corsair archers are going to be able to get away, at least partially, from the Tarnostian Lancers. You can see there that the camels have also retreated a little bit. The Muhad Beastmasters would be just the ticket for dealing with something like the Tarnostian Lancers as they moved away. You can see there the Corsair archers not going to be allowed to simply stand in front of the Dol Amroth line and get value off, which is obviously a good move here from Dol Amroth. The cavalry is paying off there. They do need to be careful, they definitely need to be patient, the defenders even more so than the attackers with their cavalry, like trying to chase them down too far is going to go very, very poorly. The Muhad Beastmasters will beat them in melee as well as doing a lot of damage with their javelins. Being patient with the cavalry is something which Dol Amroth can do to good effect here. Meanwhile, over on this side, obviously a very long battle this, so it's going to be happening in pretty distinct phases, I would say. Ramasekal garrison archers in position here as Umbar begin their advance along with Harad. The dismounted Serpent Guard with the armour upgrades being supported by the basic spears of the Belagaya footmen, which Ramasekal garrison archers are not going to be able to kill with impunity on the approach. The Athelian Rangers, on the other hand, will. Although I would say the Athelian Rangers probably want to be using their ammunition on things that aren't line infantry units like this. We saw in the last battle how brutally effective the Athala Rangers were in their position. I would have said that the Athelian Rangers probably would have been better off on the hill over there. That's a lot of archers here from Gondor, though, a huge amount of archers in fact, so they will take some pretty hefty casualties on the approach here, both Harad and Umbar. But I question whether or not this is going to be worth it in the long run for the Gondorians, because they will get to the front line. All of these units are shielded. Armour upgraded as well in the case of the Serpent Guard. Admittedly, their shield value is not huge. Their round shields, obviously, certainly not to the same sort of level as something like the Blackwatch Legion. You can see there the Athelian Rangers and the Archers retreating. And it's only a unit of Ramasekal garrison, I think, which are standing in the way of this advance. Now, I would say that the attackers need to be careful here, because this is a force which doesn't have readily available reinforcements. Now the Beast Tamers are coming forward with the Nadu Tariq, but they do need to be careful that this initial assault doesn't break quickly, because Gondor could overwhelm them very, very easily, and then this advance will have been for nothing. And you can see already that the Gondorians' really heavy archer focus already doing a lot of damage to this approach, but obviously they only have so much ammunition. As the battle goes on, this could prove to be a point against them. And now you can see that these dismounted Serpent Guard are going to be charging into battle against the Ramasekal garrison. As far as a militia unit goes, they're not going to be quite as useless in melee as militia spears, but they are still thoroughly outclassed by the upgraded dismounted Serpent Guard here. Very much a Gondorian fodder unit, slightly stronger than the civilians of course, but even so. Now you can see the Belagaya footmen. So this is a large amount of infantry coming forward here, and the Ramasekal garrison already winded. A militia unit through and through. Gondor need to be prepared to quickly reinforce them. There's also a lot of friendly fire going into their backs. Still, a lot of damage being done to the Harad and Umbar approach. Meanwhile, Over here, yet more skirmishing, which unsurprising that this is the way that Umbar would be choosing to deal with such a situation. Very cheap Corsair archers, very tough Abrazani Nadu Baweeb also involved in their compositions. Naru Naaru Royal Guard, of course. But eventually, they're going to have to throw down and go into melee. And that is presumably where Dol Amroth will do fairly well for themselves, because they have obviously got a lot of pikes. I'm actually surprised that Minhash has got his pikes on the front line here, without any sort of shielded unit absorbing their blows. One of the main reasons for doing that, sort of the phalanx tactic of having a shielded unit just in front of the pikes, is so that the shields absorb most of the arrows, whereas here the Doran Ernil pikemen are being hung out to dry, really. They do have the armour upgrade, so that will help them a little bit, particularly against the lower quality archers that the Corsair archers are. But even so, there are going to be unnecessary casualties being inflicted here, and the Doran Ernil pikemen are going to be one of the ways in which those Corsair pikes are not going to be able to leverage their superior range against the Athlon halberdiers. Meanwhile, here in the middle, just sort of biding their time, those Trebuchet crewmen, the Nimrodal Rangers, also potentially getting into position. They need to be careful. They really don't want to be getting involved in a skirmish fight. Another sally out here, though. The Tarnostian Lancers, they do have to go through their own men, so it is a slower process, and this, of course, will allow Umbar to see exactly when they are coming. Muhad Beastmasters also coming in. Will the Corsair Archers see this? I mean, surely they will. But they're not going to get away in time, because the Cavalry barreling down on them, and this is going to do huge damage to this unit of Corsair Archers. The Tarnostian Lancers are not exactly the most elite Lancers. I believe they only have a charge bonus of 10, for example. They're getting value off here, and they're making it more difficult for Umbar to skirmish. Meanwhile, yeah, that unit of Ramasek or Garrison was ill-equipped, and I feel as though that was maybe a little bit of a waste. I know that he's trying to layer his defence here to use the skirmishers, which is a much more understandable reason than how most people use it to just try and shield their elites. But I still feel as though the Ramasek or Garrison could have still been useful in this particular fight over here, where they would have added numbers, whereas over there they were just kind of dumpstered by the on-rushing Umbar and Harad forces. However, Umbar and Harad's infantry over here is looking very battered and bruised, and at this point the reinforcements are nowhere near. So overall, while that is a minor mistake for the defenders, this has still been an engagement which has been quite fruitful for them, because this first wave of the attacking forces on this side of the battlefield is going to be repulsed relatively easily. Combination of Gondor spears with the upgrade, the first level of upgrades anyway, combined with those guards of Osgiliath as well. There's also some Gondor infantry pushing in from the flank, and all of that skirmish pressure that Gondor is applying. It's not going to go well here, this initial assault from Harad and Umbar. And again, part of the reason for this, I think those Belagaya footmen do have the armour upgrades actually, but Belagaya footmen just don't have the damage. And the Serpent Guard are actually pretty good as far as line infantry goes, you know, decent amount of skill. But there wasn't really any true damage dealers. You either have to come forward with overwhelming numbers, or you need to have some units which are capable of dishing out an awful lot of punishment quite quickly. Like the Trollmen of Harad would easily manage to dumpster Gondor infantry and Gondor spears. You can see here that the Gondor archers are just trying to get on slightly elevated ground. They have a nice shot there into the flank of that unit of Serpent Guard, which they are taking. Fire arrows as well. Harad forces are wavering, no reinforcements in sight, hideously outnumbered and outgunned by the Gondorian defensive line here. And this choke point will hold. And it looks as though I think the Steward of Dale and Y2K86 at this point have realised that this isn't going to go too well. The Steward of Dale is going to send forward another unit of Beast Tamers, but I'm not really sure that it's worthwhile at this point. They need to sort of regroup and then come as a big invading force across these bridges. I think that they would also be better off waiting until the attack has begun in earnest on the other side as well. Because as things stand, the Umbar and Harad forces on the other side of the map are trying to skirmish with Dol Amroth. I think they'd be better off waiting for the infantry push before they did anything. Now you can see the Serpent Guard are routing. They're also routing through the Gondorian lines, which means they're going to be slaughtered. And also the Belagaya footman staying in the fight longer than Serpent Guard here. Umbar do have pretty good morale across the board, but unfortunately their fate will be to break here as well. Another unit of dismounted Serpent Guard coming in. Again, it's not just wave-based defending which can go wrong, but also wave-based attacking, and I think the Steward of Dale and Y2K86 are going to learn this if this is the tactic they continue to try and use. Gondorian archers, again, not the most potent at dealing damage, but as time goes along, this will whittle down the Serpent Guard. Again, this Gondorian front line is going to be able to hold relatively firmly. The guards of Osgiliath in here, unchallenged really in terms of range, providing the anchor to this line, and then the Gondorian infantry and spears just adding to that. And already the Serpent Guard are shaken. They've only just got into melee with the Gondorian line here. But the support of these Gondorian skirmishers standing the defenders in very good stead thus far. And this is before any of the really serious Gondorian infantry has been committed, so Captain Gervais can certainly be pleased with his day's work so far, and already the Beast Tamer's breaking. Again, they are a relatively basic Haradrim unit, and they were getting pounded by the arrows on the approach, and they have very, very little armour, so perhaps that's not too surprising. Meanwhile, the mercenary cavalry is now over here, so the melee cavalry trying to block the advance of the Tarnostian Lancers. We can see that there has been a recycling of the skirmishers over here. The Corsair Archers now working in tandem with another very low tier archer unit, the Haradrim Archers. But I'm surprised that the melee cavalry wasn't here sooner, to be honest with you, because it's very clear that the Tarnostian Lancers are just going in and out like the tide, trying to charge into these archers and limit the amount of skirmishing that they can do. And they're coming back again, so the mercenary cavalry have just retreated. They will need to come forward once more, though, because, again, very slow reactions here from Umbar and Harad, because once again the Tarnostian Lancers at this point have killed their fair share of low tier archers, to the point where they've probably already paid for themselves, so a worthwhile bring here from Tic Tac. And also, as lower tier Lancers, they hold a little bit less importance than the Knights of the Silver Swan that Minhash has brought, and the Swan Knights, which Tic Tac has brought. The mercenary cavalry is charging in, but they're not going to be able to catch up to the Lancers, and if they charge too far, they will of course skewer themselves onto the pikemen. Well, over here you can see down here on the lower ground the Corsair Archers trying to do some damage. The Tirathea Marksman's armour, however, standing them in good stead. And they've also taken some fairly hefty losses. Tirathea Marksman up on the cliffs as well. Once again from Tic Tac. So Minhash is going to be taking this hill. Tic Tac is going to be taking the centre. Coming across the bridges is hard. You know, the pathfinding in Medieval 2 when it comes to bridges is not the best, as I've mentioned in the past. And I feel as though that is something which the defenders can take advantage of, just like in the last battle where Dale's walls sort of worked in their favour very much so. I feel as though the bridges here can also work in their favour. Meanwhile, Trebuchet, unfortunately very narrowly missing the clustered Nadu Tariq. I feel as though this is a little bit impetuous of Tic Tac. He really needs to save the Trebuchet. The Trebuchet can be one of the things which can win this battle for the defenders. But if they waste the ammunition just trying to take pot shots at these mace men, it's not going to go too well. You'd be much better off waiting until Umbar are forced to come forward. At least that is my read of the situation. I mean, he could get a good hit. You can see the inaccuracy of the Trebuchet, particularly at longer ranges like this. The Trebuchet has got an enormous range, but its accuracy at long range is dreadful, especially with fire ammunition. So Tic Tac is definitely going to be best off saving some ammo over here, rather than using it right now. Mistakes, of course, can be amplified when you're the defenders. Over here, now the Trollmen have come forward, but the Trollmen have got not a lot of support, honestly. And once again, this attack from the Steward of Dale is not going very well. The two units of upgraded Nadu Tariq are coming in now, but a very ill-fated assault so far on this side from the attackers, and the Gondorian line is held firm, and this is why you come forward in numbers. This is why you so often see the attackers form a death ball to just try and smash defensive lines out the way. Because if you come in waves, as I've said before, whether you're the defenders or the attackers, this is what happens. The Trollmen are a very, very strong unit, and of course, under most normal circumstances, they will easily beat standard Gondorian units, but with the support of these skirmishers and with not a lot of support of their own, I mean, there are javelins coming forward, but it's all too easy at this point for Gondor to focus down individual units as they move forward. There are still a lot of units across the river, but they are very spread out, and reinforcements just haven't come forward quickly enough. You can see that Zawer, the other Haradrim army, is now going to be sending forward some Haradrim spearmen, but if this situation called for anything, it's not going to be single units of low-tier militia spears. The Gondorians still very comfortably holding the line, even with the AP from both the Trollmen and the Nadu Tariq. The archers here are the key. And so far, Captain Gervais having a very good time of it. You can actually see that they've pushed back the attackers from the corpses on the floor. Meanwhile, we now see a melee engagement over here. Eothad coming forward, as well as Dump Truck, with some Corsair pikemen and some Corsair savages, attacking the front line of Minhash. Doran Ernil pikemen and Tirithea wardens combining their might. And the Dol Amroth players should be able to hold relatively firmly here. The Corsair Savages do have AP, but they also have no armour at all. Although I think they have been given the armour... Well, actually no, based on the look of some of them. I think one of the units has. I think Dump Trucks has, but Aethad's has not. Archers, regardless of the armour upgrade, will be able to slaughter Corsair Savages. The pikes here. This is a thin front line, however. Dol Amroth need to be prepared to send forward reinforcements, because it's very obvious the attackers are going to try and use their bulk to just force the defenders out the way, and I think more Doran Ernil pikemen are going to be committed forward. Dump Truck, you can see, sending forward more of his upgraded Corsair Savages to add to the AP pressure on the front line. AP, of course, one of the best methods for dealing with Dol Amroth infantry. Here comes another unit of pikes, however, to shore up this line, and the Doran Ernil pikemen. Just a basic pike, nothing too special about them, but obviously the range is what gives pikes their appeal. Still, those Corsair archers and Haradrim archers trying their best to skirmish down this front line, but now their inaccuracy will cause a little bit of friendly fire. Taking that arrow like a champ, that pikeman. The upgraded armour proving its worth. That unit of pikes now coming in. The shields from the Tirithea wardens providing a little bit of protection as well, which I'm honestly surprised they weren't there sooner. But here you can see the Umbar are going to need a little bit more of a serious presence here if they're going to truly challenge. It looks as though they're not actually going to go across the bridges at all, which, again, I always feel like if you limit the scope of your attacks to sort of fewer choke points as the attackers, you're really playing into the defenders' hands. I know the bridges are a bit of a pain to go across, and I know that Trebuchet is waiting right there, which Tic Tac has now ceased firing, which is good. But even so, as the attackers, you really need to pressure the defenders from as many angles as you possibly can, because they don't have the manpower to sustain that for as long as you do as the attackers. Meanwhile, this is a little bit more like it. Although the Trollmen at this point have already fallen by the wayside. Can you imagine if the Trollmen had come forward with the Nadu Tariq and the Castamir's Legion all at once, all while being supported by a more healthy unit of Muhad Beast Hunters? That would have made the Gondorian skirmishers' job much more difficult, and it would have made the job of their infantry much more difficult, because they are now losing this fight, which again goes to show how strong Umbar can truly be in a melee fight. They're also being backed up by a few Beast Tamers that did not rout. So now a little bit of reinforcements going to be required from the Gondorians, but fortunately they do have reinforcements, plentiful reinforcements ready. Warns of the White Tower, Nimlothian Honor Guard, Citadel Guard, all the right sort of units to come forward and reinforce. Captain Gervais does need to be careful, however. You can see there that several of these Haradrim spearmen getting bisected by some arrow fire. But it does look as though this is going to be the area which the attackers have invested a fair amount in. There's still a lot of units across the way, Y2K and Aethad's army, so very much a mixed approach on all sides. It wasn't as if a single army was responsible for this. Everyone seems to be chipping in. Here come the Athelian Rangers, who saw how deadly Rangers can be in that last fight in the Siege of Dale. And they're once again trying to get into position, and at this point I don't think they have much of an answer to this. The Nadu Bawib are now moving forward, but will they be able to get into position quickly enough to kill off the Rangers? I don't think so. That's going to be really nasty. Do need to get into position quickly, however, because when the Nadu Bawib get there, there's only going to be one target in their mind, and it will certainly be the Rangers. It's no secret how powerful Rangers can be in this situation. And you can see, actually, I think now, at this point, the attackers realise the danger they're in, because they're trying to push through. Gondor needs some more infantry reinforcements, however, and it looks as though the Kerandros Swordmasters are going to provide that. They will be able to carve their way through, the Haradrim in particular. Not exactly a particularly beefy volley there. Here we go. Now they're going to start to do some damage, and with the reinforcements from the Kerandros Swordmasters, the attackers are once again going to have to commit more men to try and keep this assault up. And the Nadu Tariq already routing actually under the body piercing. So, yep, the attackers going to need more. They do have some more Castamir's Legion moving forward, the Nadu Bawib. These Kerandros marksmen have been sort of harassing the attacks as they move forward, so you can see the attackers trying to use this sort of divot. But the Trollmen and the Castamir's Legion need to be moved forward now, because I do still feel as though Captain Gervais may be a little bit reluctant to commit forward more and more men. So maybe that could be the way in for the attackers. Meanwhile, over here, very much a grind fest over on this front line as well. You can see that the Corsair archers now committed forward to the front line, so obviously out of ammunition. They're going to be able to do very little against this Dol Amroth front line, and this is exactly the sort of engagement that you want as the defenders. Wave by wave the attackers commit forwards, giving your infantry as much value as it possibly can get. Dol Amroth's banners fluttering in the breeze, Corsair pikemen moving forward, the camels shifting their focus. But it is very, very clear to me that the attacking forces are very insistent on going this way. You can also see that up there on that hill, the Blackroot Vale Archers and the Nimrodale Rangers in the perfect position for them, able to fire right along the approaching forces. At this point it's only lower tier units, so they might want to be careful they don't use up too much of their ammunition. But even so, we can actually see now the bridge is getting used. For the first time in this fight we can see that the Steward of Dale is going to be committing his camels across the bridges, although I would imagine they're going to be shot down. Again, all of the Muhad units have got real issues when it comes to their armour. And archers are not something which the defenders are hurting for here. They pull out their maces, their war clubs, AP, of course. But if they charge in here, they're just going to get, if they charge in deeply enough, they're just going to hit the stakes. Which I think maybe the Steward of Dale is realising now. His camels are shaken before ever actually engaging the enemy. What is the play here, I wonder? Is he going to try and rear charge? But on their own, they're not really going to be up to much, and this is going to break them, I think. The Athlon men-at-arms are not an anti-cavalry unit, but in this sort of situation, they're just going to be able to overwhelm the camels, and bye-bye to them. Although, it does look as though they used up all of their ammunition at the very least, so value was achieved from the Beastmasters, but maybe not as much as the Steward of Dale was hoping for. Trying to rear charge that clump of infantry up there, however, would have just resulted in the same thing. They're certainly not a unit of shock cavalry. If it was the Warlords of Umbar, that maybe would have been a little bit scarier. Meanwhile, Ramazakor garrison archers being committed to the front line, once again to try and shore things up. The Trollmen are on the front line. You can see now the Trollmen doing a decent amount of damage. Corsair pikemen. Again, this attack is looking much more like it from a Harad and Umbar perspective now. The Gondorians throwing forward more skirmishers to try and hold the line, which is fine, trying to get as much value off them as possible, and the Gondorian skirmishers, particularly when you get to the higher tiers, certainly can mix it in melee. But the tide is shifting a little bit here, I think, with Umbar being able to use their own skirmishers, doing a lot of damage here. Admittedly, the Citadel Guard and Shield Wall will be able to absorb a lot of arrow fire, but even so, this is a unit which can't really be lost for nothing from a Gondorian perspective. If they're being shot like this, it might just be time to commit them to melee. Get as much value as you can off that AP in there, which admittedly is not actually going to be very useful against a lot of the forces which are on the front line now. The Castamir's Legion, yes, but the Trollmen, the Corsairs, the basic Harajam units, no. And now we're starting to see a little bit of breakage from Gondor. So again, and you can see there that the Muhad Beastmasters, the camels, using their javelins, shooting into the Citadel Guard, and now actually, perhaps tired of Captain Gervais's hesitation to reinforce this front line, Dol Amroth are going to do it themselves with some Athlon Halberdiers. Again, the AP won't be terribly useful, but the Phalanx will. Good to see that these Citadel Guard are finally going to get stuck in, because Gondor, they need to hold this line really. If it turns into a fight where they have to cover multiple angles of attack in the city streets, that's going to suit the attackers far more. And Gondor have already committed a fair amount of resources to defending this choke point. And that's half of the Gondorian army gone, although it is the more bread and butter half, not the elite half. Meanwhile, over here, this front line shows very little signs of moving, although at this point Dol Amroth, again, there really isn't anything on the front line that would give them too much to be worried about. It's just basic Corsairs. I mean, the pikes, I've said they can be very cost effective, but Dol Amroth have got numbers on their pikemen here. The numbers advantage. There's not really any genuine damage dealers. I mean, you can see that they're still trying to use their archers to skirmish down with Dol Amroth as much as possible, but I think Minhash's army has stood up to this skirmish fire really well at this point. Now you can see some Harajam spearmen from Zawer starting to move across the bridge. Again, this could be a mistake, because if they're going to go across the bridge, they need to go across in numbers. The Dol Amroth force over here is still numerous, but it's not overwhelming. The trebuchet is really the most concerning thing. It's going to take more than Harajam spearmen to cause Dol Amroth much trouble if they do go across the bridge. You really don't want to be feeding kills into the defenders needlessly. So they're going to need some more heavy-duty reinforcements, I think, something like the Nadu Tariq, perhaps. Warlords of Umbar are loitering with intent. Now that could be an interesting gambit as well, to try and get them around the stakes, up the hill and into the trebuchet. And then they mount an assault across the bridges as well as onto the high ground. That would... that could be the sort of move which decides the match. If it goes well for the attackers, they'll probably win. If it went poorly, then they would probably have spent most of their manpower not achieving a whole lot. Meanwhile, speaking of a large-scale engagement, the Gondorians have now committed forward the Nimlothian Honour Guard, which is good to see. The Athelian Rangers are really starting to take a beating from the Nadu Bawib, and the Castamir's Rangers, offensive Rangers, trying to ply their grisly trade. Kerandros Marksmen being committed to melee. They, of course, are a unit which can certainly do very well in melee. Once again, I feel as though the attackers could start to run out of steam a little bit here. Now, there is another wave coming forward. You can see them in the distance there coming across the bridge. I wonder what it is. More Corsair Pikes. Some Naru and Aru Sentinels as well. So, Umbar heavy infantry and pikes combined with some cheaper pikes. Eventually, I do feel as though this defensive line is going to give way. It's just a matter of how much the defenders can make the attackers pay for it. The Beast Hunters are in position. You can now see that the attackers have really got the skirmish advantage. The Gondorians really dumped all of their ammunition early, which paid dividends. But at this point, the attackers are going to be able to use their own archers and javelins. And use them unimpeded, which is going to do a lot of damage to the Gondorians as time goes on. The Nimlothian Honour Guard defeat is almost a certainty. It really does go to show how effective the Trollmen can be in this sort of fight. But with the reinforcements, I still feel as though if Gondor were going to reinforce, they need to send forward more. Citadel Guard are on the way, which is good to see. Black Swan Vanguard are on the way, which is also good to see. With the on-rushing Castamir's Legion and Narun Arurul Guard, that AP from those maces is going to come in very, very handy. Meanwhile, we can see now that the Harajam Spearmen did come forward, but they're really not going to be able to achieve an awful lot. Dol Amroth simply moving forward their much more professional soldiers to block. The Halberdiers are going to be able to send the Harajam Spearmen packing. It's going to be a very similar story over here. Obviously the AP is not going to be terribly important against the Harad Spears, but the Harad Spears, in terms of stats and in their own right, are such a garbage unit. They do get brought an awful lot for the same reason, and that is that they are very cheap, and when they are used as part of a unified push, their numbers can be useful. But when they're just sort of here on their own, it's not really going to do an awful lot for the attackers. It's good that they're pressuring multiple fronts, but they really need more men to help out. Then again, this is what the defenders need. Outnumbered by 2 armies, they do need mistakes to be made like this in order to sort of try and claw back some sort of advantage for themselves. But the Halberdiers are going to be able to hold very, very firmly, and the Harajam Spearmen will certainly rout before they are killed off completely. Wavering already. Shaken already. Still, this is a relatively thin on the ground defence at this point, and I feel as though that is because more reinforcements have been sent over here. The Black Swans are now on the front line, which once again has stabilised things. I do like the Black Swans. Black Swan Renegades, I believe, will be their new name in 0.97. Athelian Rangers, there's still some Fountain Guard back here, as well as some Wardens of the White Tower, Veterans, Kerandros Marksmen. I mean, to be fair, at this point, Gondor's army's looking fairly battered and bruised. However, the attackers don't have much left in reserve over here. Savages. What they do have in reserve is still scary, though. Demons of the Desert, Champions of Nafarat. What is that in the distance? Warlords of Umbar. And that is a good point. If this Gondorian front line is to fall, the Warlords of Umbar will be able to charge through the city and try and rear-charge the defensive positions on the other side. Which is not really what the defenders want, which is probably why they want to just try and hold the attackers here if they can help it. Defeat seems certain. Some of these lower tier units on this front line starting to become shaken. Defeat is a distinct possibility.
They have lost half their men.
Indeed, I wonder what army that is. As the rain comes down, more Corsair Pikemen, more Savages, Narun Arurul Guards to Eothad also, and I think the attackers are not blind to the fact that if they do win on this side, it will help them on the other side. You can see here, the Harajam Spearmen advance. Ill-fated, Athelon Men-at-Arms giving the Halberdiers a little bit of help to send them packing as quickly as possible, feeding kills into the defenders really there. Meanwhile, let's go and see what's happening up here. Has this front line moved at all? It has not. More units have come forward. The mercenary guildsmen, certainly more heavily armoured than anything that has come forward thus far, but not really the sort of power play which is going to cause an awful lot of movement in this frontline fight. Still, Dol Amroth are able to sort of commit forward more basic men. The Tirithea ones are slightly higher tier spears, but the Dol Amroth frontline still holding pretty comfortably. It's a lot of unbarring to try and cut their way through, but for the time being, this frontline will hold. Balagaya footmen, again, that's not really the sort of thing which is going to do a lot of damage very quickly unless they try and push through the Dol Amroth line, which carries risks of its own. I'm a little bit surprised to have not seen something like Corsair Blackguards, maybe some crossbow Corsairs from Umbar. We might see some Blackguards, after all, they can hide. And I might just be blind. In fact, both of those units can hide. I'm dumb. But I'm a little bit surprised we haven't seen them up to this point. Oh, there they are. Well, that's why we haven't seen them. They got pushed forward too quickly. Again, the crossbow Corsairs are definitely the sort of power play you want to make in the late game because they're so vulnerable to arrows. They can do so much damage if they are allowed to fire unimpeded. And against an armoured front line like Dol Amroth had put up, that would have been exactly the sort of thing they needed. More Haradrim Spearmen. More Haradrim Spearmen is not the answer to this engagement over here. I'm impressed that this unit of Haradrim Spearmen has actually held for as long as it has. I mean, it will break eventually, of course, but still, good on that. Performing above par. Meanwhile, this still is the front line where quite a lot is riding on this. And this front line is starting to look a little bit weaker. The Demons of the Desert are here, the Casimir's Rangers firing, Savages, the Warlords of Umbar getting ready to make their play. What are they firing at? The Athelian Rangers are pretty much all dead at this point. Might be time to particularly send another unit of reinforcements over here, even if it's just another unit of Caer Andros marksmen that are out of ammunition. You could certainly do with a little bit more in terms of reinforcements. And also at this point, Umbar have the pike advantage, most certainly. Corsair pikes are here on the front line. That phalanx is going to be perhaps fairly decisive in this fight, determining how it goes as this fight progresses. A little bit of a banana forming here in favour of Gondor, but I can't help but feel as though, I mean, there's not an awful lot left over here. Corsair Savages will die like dogs in melee. The AP will help, but I mean, Champions of Nafrat, 2 Castamir's Legion. Yeah, the attackers should win this eventually. Honestly, at this point, the attackers would probably be best off committing forward more. Force the hand of the defenders. Are you going to commit forward more resources to defend this choke point, or are you going to run? That would be the question to ask the defenders at this point, in my opinion. As things stand, they're starting to lose this front line, because really the Corsair pikemen kind of being left out in the cold here, and the Corsair Savages not really of the level of quality they're going to need to quickly deal with stuff like Nimlothian Honor Guard and Black Swan Vanguards. Those are just officer mod because they aren't the actual Talon Knights. The AP won't help against the Corsair Savages, but their melee skill is not good. Cheap Axemen have always got a problem with melee skill, defensive skill. Meanwhile, this front line again is not really progressing all that quickly. The Mumakil, they're still a factor. I mean, the Mumakil, once again, the time may be coming to try and think about using the Mumakil, because if you save them for too late in the day, you're not going to have the manpower to take advantage of the holes they make. And I feel as though that's the problem here. I mean, Minhash's army is still very comfortably dealing with this assault. More Corsair archers is not the answer. The Mercenary Guildsmen have had a little bit more of an impact over on this side of the line. Minhash will need to commit forward more infantry to hold this. But he does have Halberdiers, he does have Black Swan Vanguard. There's going to be absolutely no problems there. The Trebuchet firing into the Muhad warriors as they advance, so maybe a little bit more pressure being applied here. Haradrim Spearmen. This time they are going to be supported by Muhad warriors. I would still, if they're going to do this, they certainly need to come forward in more numbers. You can see more Muhad warriors being committed across there. This is a little bit more like it from Zawer. If he also applies pressure with his Mumakil up on the higher ground over here against Minhash. Good hits there into the Muhad warriors from the Trebuchet. The Halberdiers are holding. They of course have reserves as well. But it's a whole battle picture you have to look at. They're not going to win this, of course, but they're putting pressure, they're tying resources of the defenders up. They're slowly but surely making progress over on this front line over here. The mercenary guildsmen are slowly doing the trick, although if they break, that would be a real tragedy, considering the ground they've already made up. The Athlon men-at-arms are ready to reinforce anyway, to be fair, but it's over on this side, though, where the attackers, it looks as though they're going to start to have more joy. In fact, it looks as though the defenders have made their mind up. Have they? It looked as though they were going to think about retreating there, but it looks as though they changed their mind once again. I mean, more reinforcements are definitely required, and here comes Captain Gervais. He's going to be committing forward pretty much what's left of his infantry at this point. Veterans of Osgiliath, more Citadel Guard, more Carandros marksmen. He does have those Wardens of the White Tower waiting in the wings as well, which will scarcely find a stronger sword and board bodyguard unit. Obviously this is a lot of quality coming forward once again, so the attackers, again, they're going to have to respond. They're going to have to respond with more men. The Demons of the Desert are here. They'll be able to do a lot of damage, but whether they have the best of shots remains to be seen. It's those 2 units of Castamir's Legion which should push the attackers over the edge, at least create a gap for the Warlords of Umbar to take advantage of. Carandros marksmen, the fact that they are good in melee could prove to be a fairly decisive factor in this battle. Their skill will stand them in very good stead against the Axemen, although the AP will also inflict damage onto them. The Citadel Guard, target of a fair amount of skirmish fire. The Demons of the Desert getting a few grazing hits, but it wasn't quite as devastating as I think the Gondor player was fearing there. Here come the Castamir's Legion once again, though. A real grind fest over on that side, meanwhile. The Muhard warriors do in fact manage to get into melee, although defeat immediately seems certain because the Dol Amroth front line is sturdy enough to withstand a single unit of infantry like this. Well, these Athlon men-at-arms are sort of running into the walls. They need to be manually pathed back onto dry land, as it were. Interesting times abound, and speaking of which, now, oof, that's body piercing. I recognise that lag. Yes, indeed, it's the Nimrodel Rangers. One of the Mumakil already falling. Several of the Mumakil already falling. What on earth did that? Harajam Archers? They may have been taking damage the whole way forward, but that... I mean, it must have been the 2 units of Belfalas Marines. The Mumakil... That could be very decisive, actually. I mean, I feel as though the Mumakil there were very guilty of slowly walking towards the enemy. They needed to run really quickly in order to shut down the Belfalas Marines. The Javelins, because they must have been able to get several volleys off into the Mumakil there, because Javelins will no longer kill Mumakil in a single volley. Only a few units are capable of doing that. I believe the Balchot Sapphire Bladesmen, the Khazad-dûm Reclaimers, and the Demons of the Desert, although you can't have mirror matches, so that's a moot point. I believe they're the only ones capable of doing it. There may be 1 or 2 others, but basic javelins like the Belfalas Marines cannot, so they must have been able to get at least 3 or 4 volleys into the Mumakil. And that's going to cause, that's a large break, so that could be the turning of the tide. I think that was the attackers' chance here to do a lot of damage to this front line, and it wasn't taken, and Minhash has now been able to reinforce with more infantry. And the attackers are back to square one over here. Still, no progress made. The mercenaries are looking like they might break off. The Nimrodel Rangers are firing in. Again, there's still resources down here. There's still a lot of attackers left to be committed forward over here, but the attackers are starting to run a little low. A little low on manpower that they can call upon. This, however, is very key. The attackers need to make this count now. The disaster of the Mumakil over on the other front. This is going to be where they make it count. The Citadel Guard are going to try and kill off the Warlords of Umbar. Anti-cavalry and armour piercing is a potent combination. The attackers need to use their cavalry here. The camels, the Warlords, they need to charge in. They need to do a lot of damage very, very quickly because this defensive line has finally been broken.
Only half the enemy force remains.
Not a lot of men left over here. Castamir's Legion, Naran Sentinels. I mean, it's a fairly potent little force, this. But maybe not as numerous as the attackers would have hoped for. Meanwhile, Veterans of Castamir's Rangers, who presumably were out of ammunition, trying to cut off the retreat of the defenders. But Talon Knights, Veterans of Osgiliath, Wardens of the White Tower, not exactly the easiest units to bring down. The Warlords of Umbar also starting to fall by the wayside, taking a lot of damage from those Citadel Guard earlier. And now it's how quickly the defenders can sort of retreat and regroup, because I would imagine they're all going to try and ball up in one area over there. They need to be careful, however, because if the attackers are being savvy, they could send their cavalry to kill off the Nimrodel Rangers, which are up here. They may be hidden, but the attackers surely know that they are there. And of course, if all of the defensive infantry retreats to this position over here, maybe that hill, and they'll be leaving those archers wide open, and they still need to hold this line after all. Now you can see, I think the attackers, it's now or never for the attackers, and I think they realise that. They're committing forward more serious units. Abrazani, Nadu Tariq are coming forward en masse. The Castamir's Rangers, which have presumably been firing for a while. And here go the Belfalas Marine Tower, not content with just finishing off the Mumakil, also doing some damage now to the Abrazani. Good play all around this. The defenders still looking in fairly good shape, and as the attackers' numbers start to dwindle, the defensive cavalry could come into their own. The Swan Knights and the Knights of the Silver Swan. Potent combination of lancers and high damage melee cavalry. Belfalas Marines trying to run. Citadel Guard are here. Yeah, a bit of a disorderly retreat this, really. Where did all of those elites go? Well, there they are, the Wardens of the White Tower, Veterans of Osgiliath, Fountain Guard moving back as well. Citadel Guard may have to be thrown under the bus here. The Beastmasters, so the city itself is lost, although at this point, those Rangers who were so effective earlier may very well be cut off, because they're going to have to try and retreat down the hill. They may have been better off trying to hide them and hoping that the attackers forgot about them, because now they are in broad daylight and the offensive cavalry is going to come for them. The Beastmasters, with only 13 of them, maybe not the most scary thing in the world. The Warlords of Umbar, Knights, armour-piercing charge of 20 will flatten a unit of Rangers like this. And of course the Blackroot Vale Archers are there as well. Here come the Camels. Camel's probably not used to rain. Oh, there goes the officer. Not a huge charge there. Unsurprising, really. The Beastmasters not really designed to charge in like that. But here come the Warlords. Only 9 of them remaining, actually, so they did take a beating in trying to force their team forwards. Though they did have some success. The Rudel Rangers holding their own in melee, taking losses, but giving as good as they get. This, however, is going to be the ultimate litmus test of how they deal with a charge, because even with only 9 of them, Knights are capable of doing an incredible amount of damage. And there they go. Absolutely flattening that unit of Blackwood Vale Archers, more than halving. Or, well, halving around that amount of that unit, with no kills in return. Rough times for them. Here comes Eothad's forces, who are largely all that remains of this attack on this side. Perhaps trying to get into the rear of this position over here, but they do have defences ready to meet them. Perhaps going to try and go across the bridge again. Zawer. Wave-based approach. Southward Warband, Demons of the Desert, maybe getting themselves into a position where they could be shot. How are the attackers doing over here, though? Now the attackers look like they're, again, I feel as though they could have committed forward more elite troops a little earlier. They would have, of course, been focused down by range fire, but they took a bit of a beating anyway from the javelins. Now the attackers are starting to make inroads over here. Still the line holds, but you get the sense that it won't be long before it does fall. And then the defenders will be sort of marooned and isolated. It looks as though it's going to follow a very similar path to, I think, the last time I showed TOL FALAS, where ultimately the attackers make their stand on this hillside over here. The trebuchet should still have ammunition, actually. Forward comes the cavalry. At this point, the Swan Knights are completely unharmed, and that should mean that the Warlords will fall very, very easily. Blackroot Vale Archers and Nimrodel Rangers trying to escape. Citadel Guard are over here, actually. They once again came to the aid of their allies, killing off another Warlord. That should be the end of the Camels as well. Unfortunately, however, the Nimrodel Rangers caught out. I think they're out of ammunition anyway, so the vast bulk of the damage they would have been capable of doing has already been done. Still would have been nice to have them escape. Here come the Casimir's Legion. I can't help but notice that the Trebuchet is firing. Again, maybe a bit prematurely. And it's trying to get a nice frontal hit there into the Southron Warband. They're being backed up by Champions of Nafrat, actually, so this push from Zawer backed up by someone's Champions of Nafrat. Whose are they? Oh, they are Zawer's. This is something which is going to need a little bit more than just a single line of halberdiers, I think, because the Champions of Nafrat, if they punch through the phalanx, are going to do horrendous damage to halberdiers. Over on this side, the Southern Warband, the AP will help, but I still feel as though the halberds should be able to hold the line, especially if they receive some backup. Other unit of halberdiers. That is going to leave this bridge open, which is maybe the gap he was looking for to use his Serpent bodyguards. Meanwhile, everything that Minhash has left over here has now been committed forward. AP from Black Swan Vanguard will make it just that much more difficult for this front line to be broken down again. Also, the Talon Knights are in over here as well. So still, Minhash making life as difficult as possible for the attackers to move forward. What do they actually have left? I mean, they've got Merc Cavalry. I mean, cavalry is not really what's called for when you're trying to punch through a line, unless it's completely without spears and pikes. Yeah, there's not an awful lot left over here, is there? I mean, we're past the halfway point now, but if we have a look at the percentage of kills, the defenders are ahead by just over 10%. As we know, the snowball effect tends to favour the attackers in the late game, so this is shaping up to be a very close run thing, especially when this front line starts to fall apart, because then the percentages will close pretty dramatically, you would feel. Meanwhile, what have we over here? Veterans Osculia, so the retreat wasn't entirely comprehensive. You can see the Fountain Guard coming over here, the Demons of the Desert, backed up by the Champions of Nafrat. That is a... Is Captain Gervais paying attention? He is not, because those Demons of the Desert getting a brutal volley into the Fountain Guard. Demons of the Desert, arguably the most potent tool Harad can field in certain situations. Obviously the Mumakil have their appeals as well, but here, the Demons of the Desert in a more confined siege environment like this, brutal. And that completely healthy unit of Fountain Guard is suddenly heavily depleted. Important catch that for the defenders. Veterans of Osgiliath and Wardens of the White Tower trying to hold back this advance. Castamir's Legion and Naranara Royal Guard. So some brawls now erupting on the streets. There's still a long way to go in this fight, actually. Meanwhile, I would be very interested to see how the Champions of Nafrat are getting on here. Still victory seems certain, and that is even with the committal of some of Tic Tac's Talon Knights. But I would also say that now another unit of Talon Knights, these halberdiers, maintaining their position. The Black Serpents were probably thinking about coming across here, but I think they've realised that the opportunity maybe is gone. Tarnostian Lancers, Swan Knights. Most of their marksmen, do they still have ammo? They still have their bows, so yes they do. Meanwhile, now I think the Champions of Nafrat will start to collapse under the pressure. 2 units of Talon Knights in addition to the halberdiers. The AP may not help, but the pressure I think is going to be too much. And so these bridge assaults, ultimately, not comprehensive enough to really do the kind of damage to the defenders that perhaps Zawer was hoping, because really he was the only one that was taking responsibility for pushing across these bridges. Meanwhile, the rest of his fellows over on this side, almost entirely focused around trying to take this area, which it looks like they're finally going to be able to manage. All of the Abrazani Narduza Guard that were sent forward, the Numenorian Shield Guard, finally the units of quality able to make this consistent pressure tell. But it has cost them very, very dearly, the attackers. It's my word, did they have to work hard for this. They lost their Mumakil basically for free as well. They don't have much men left to take advantage of this. They've got cavalry. But cavalry, I think the defenders are in a compact enough formation where cavalry is not really going to be what's called for. Minhash needs to be careful. I think he's just doing a sort of staggered retreat here rather than leaving this unit to die. If he can retreat this unit of halberdiers, I'm sure he will. As they continue to try and finish off the Champions of Nafrat, who are really giving as good as they get. very, very deadly in melee, but 2 units of Talon Knights I think are just going to be too much for them. These Nimrodel Rangers still have ammo by the looks of things, so they definitely need to be saved. Meanwhile, the depleted forces that managed to get through that choke point on the other side, I think at this point, again, they're starting to be overwhelmed. These Naru and Aru Sentinels are a fantastic pike unit, but their formations are being broken by Talon Knights, Black Swans. This engagement over here, the Veterans of Osgiliath and the Warns of the White Tower proving too much. It's going to come down to the Haraj, and once again I think this depleted unit of Fountain Guard is going to have to try and hold back the Champions of Nafrat for as long as they possibly can, or hope and pray that a trebuchet shot hits their quarry perfectly. Because if it doesn't, of course, it will just hit the Fountain Guard. Here comes the Demons of the Desert and the Warlords, and I'm not sure whether they have any answer to this. Belfalas Marines, not really the sort of thing which can stop an advance like this. The Cavalry is, though. I'm actually quite surprised that the Knights, the Silver Swan and the Swan Knights are not moving to charge in here. I mean, they definitely cannot stay in sustained melee with the Demons of the Desert because they're two-handed spears, but a good charge could be exactly what the Doctor ordered. Demons of the Desert also now taking skirmish fire from the Nimrodel Rangers, so that's another good way to deal with them. They're going to be throwing those javelins over the hedges right into the centre of that defensive position. Here come the Warlords, and they're going to be targeted by the Cavalry. Without the Demons of the Desert, they won't have any support. It's a lot of damage those demons just did, though, and at this point I think the force which is in the city will ultimately fall short. Indeed, there goes the General at the hands of the Wardens of the White Tower. But they need to do as much damage as possible. That's going to be key in the late game because there are still forces elsewhere from the attackers which could potentially do the business for them. Demons of the Desert just still taking more skirmish fire. Tarnostian Lancers are going to try and get in there, although they immediately take a volley full on. They are going to be able to charge in though, kill off more demons, and the Tarnostian Lancers have definitely paid for themselves at this point. That's going to be the end of the Demons of the Desert. They certainly did very well for themselves, however. Killing off 2/3 of a unit of Fountain Guard and getting a very nice volley into this front line over here, which included Black Swan Vanguard and Talon Knights. Definitely a worthwhile endeavour. The Warlords, however, at this point are going to fall away as well, leaving Dol Amroth with some pretty potent cav. Swan Knights using their Zweihanders to try and crush what's left of the demons, although the demons will do a lot of damage there if they're not careful. Meanwhile, Champions of Nafrat, after smashing their way through that very depleted unit of Fountain Guard, are now going to move on to the Wardens of the White Tower, and once again the numbers advantage is theirs, the damage advantage is theirs. They're going to win that. I mean, they're doing okay for themselves here. Ethelon's Men-at-Arms being retreated, Talon Knights being retreated. Amazingly, this unit of Champions of Nafrat is going to win because they've retreated a unit of Talon Knights to try and preserve them for the final stand, I would imagine. And there you can see now the front line finally broken. Minhash having to give up his hill, and Umbar now washing over it with a depleted force, it must be said. But there is another unit of those Demons of the Desert, so they're going to be the key for the attackers here in the late game. The defenders need to make a decision on what to do here, because if they just stand here, Demons of the Desert are going to do damage to them. The Tirithea Marksmen are going to try and do as much damage as they possibly can as well. There goes another General, Veterans of Osgiliath. Those Numenorian Lancers managing to slip their way through. Ultimately, these archers that were left in reserve now being distracted. Good move from the attackers. Defenders in a little bit of danger here of making too many mistakes. Here come the Nimrodel Rangers. They're really keen on killing off the Demons of the Desert, which again, moving them forward all on their own might be a mistake from Zawer as well. Because they can be focused. Champions of Nafrat, I think, maybe are going to be occupied by the Athlon Men-at-Arms, but it looks as though they may very well actually break. Based on the numbers, you would imagine they should win this. Numbers alone do not win fights. Otherwise the attackers would easily have won this battle. And it's definitely going to be a close call. Here come the Knights of the Silver Swan. A hammer and anvil charging into the Champions of Nafrat. Definitely a good use of their time, trying to kill off this very elite unit of offensive infantry. They need to keep up this cycle charging, however. His attention may be divided, but quick micro is needed here from Minhash. And he's actually going to have his charge broken up by the Warlords, although they're just going to charge right on through. There goes the Gondorian General. in the same area actually, but we did see that the Knights of the Silver Swan managing to charge through. More kills there on the Champions of Nafrat. They need to cycle in and out, however. Sustained melee is not where the Knights of the Silver Swan want to be. So what do they have left, actually, the defenders? They don't really have anything at the top of the hill, so this is going to be very much down to the wire. The Haven Guard are still alive, which is a power play in the late game. 2 units of them, in fact. In terms of sheer melee power, the defenders have the edge. What do the attackers have? They can answer this. I don't know, I don't think they've got enough of their skirmish forces left. These Champions of Nafrat finally, I think, going to be overwhelmed by the Athlon men-at-arms of all things. Not often that you'll see basic infantry be the ones to finally finish off the unit as strong as the Champions of Nafrat. Still just under 20k frames to go though, which leads me to believe that the attackers are probably going to try and take this slowly, which they kind of have to at this point considering the quality of the melee forces that the defenders have left. The Haven Guard are being moved forward, I think, actually to try and finish off the units which are within this portion of the settlement over here. The Warlords still just about alive. Champions of Nafrat depleted, but not dead. That's a lot of the Dol Amroth Cavalry, which looks to have finally been finished off, actually. So, Knights of the Silver Swan maybe not used to as good of an effect as they would have liked. The Naruna Ari Sentinels, who have been fighting a losing battle for so long, we finally catch the final one falling, which of course is going to allow the Haven Guard and the TOL FALAS Marines over here to retreat back up to the defenders' final stand as well. That is going to be the defenders' final stand. Nadu Tariq are coming forward. Over here, the Athlon men-at-arms, they're wavering, but it's only Haraja Marchers that are attacking them. They could well finish off them as well. Actually, no, there's Demons of the Desert in there. Yeah, they're doomed. The Theo will probably take them in a moment as well, leading them to rout. Of course, no town centre on this. This is technically a siege battle, but as a map, it does not have a town centre. Still Dump Truck's army over there. Very depleted units all around. Again, the Black Serpents are not really going to find themselves to be too useful in this situation, where it's very much a straight shot up a choke point, uphill. Swift Lance is not what it's called for here. Heavy duty troops are, and these Nadu Tariq charged in all on their lonesome. And they're now surrounded a little bit by Nimrodel Rangers and Tirithea Marksmen. Again, that could be a loss which could cost the attackers the game here. Very fine margins that they're working with at this point, because the defenders do not have much left. They are going to be relying on their Haven Guard to carry the day. They do have some Black Swans and some Talon Knights as well, the Trebuchet. High quality units really, very little in the way of chaff really. The TOL FALAS Marines are the closest thing which counts as that. Come the Black Serpents, and this really is their one and only chance to get a lot of good value off to try and finish off these units here. Charge into the Tirithea Marksmen, try and smash them into the dirt, rescue the Nadu Tariq. I'm not sure whether it is worth bringing a unit of 1200 Florin Lancers just for that purpose, but we'll see. I mean, if the attackers go on to win, clearly I don't know what I'm talking about. Meanwhile, men-at-arms possibly broke, and then were completely destroyed. Not a lot left from the Demons of the Desert or the Champions of Nafrat though, so against the Haven Guard they will still find themselves outnumbered and outgunned. So, I think it's time we moved up to ×2 speed here, because it's going to take a little while for the attackers to move their way into position, I think. I would give the edge to the defenders in this position, actually. I mean, I think, based on what they're going to be trying to do, they're going to try and use their extremely depleted crossbows to get as many kills as they can, which, you know, if they still have a decent amount of ammo, over time they will do damage. Which may be why, actually, the battle is still so long. The Trebuchet. A grazing hit, but a grazing hit could still be important. Numenoid Shield Guard, Ambrosani Narduzagar, Nadu Tariq. These are not weak units. Just not quite as strong as the Haven Guard. Let's have a look at the percentage of kills now. Very, very close. You can see that the gap has lowered to just 3%. Trebuchet trying to get as many kills as it can. Getting some good hits here, which the attackers can scarce afford. They need all of the manpower available to them if they're going to beat the Haven Guard. Those Talon Knights and the Black Swans are also no easy targets. I think that's what the attackers are going to do here. They're just going to utilise these 4 crossbowmen to try and get as many kills as they possibly can before charging in. And the defenders don't really have anything in terms of range except the trebuchet, and the trebuchet is not going to be able to hit individual men like that. It would be very fortunate to do so. So all the defenders can really do at this point is just sort of sit here and try to absorb the pressure. Black Root Veil Archers are coming down, much more of a sacrificial unit at this point in time, but the Mercenary Guildsmen will move to meet them, as well as that single Casimir's Ranger, and of course if that were to happen they would be easily beaten in melee. More Mercenary Guildsmen. I'm surprised there's still Mercenary Guildsmen left. I guess they broke and then came back because they were on that very grindy front line against Minhash for quite some time. Interesting army really from Dump Truck, the fact that he brought so many of the Merc Guildsmen. Rare to see them. Definitely a lull in proceedings here, so this is the second lull, but I'm not really sure when the assault will begin. I mean, I assume it will be when all of this ammunition is expended, so I think actually I will make a little cut here because the attackers will be very keen to get as much value as they can out of these units, and it's likely to take these 4 men quite a long time to chew through their ammunition, so I will make a cut and we'll rejoin when the attackers make their final move. Well, that was quick. Almost missed that, but charging headlong into a spear line like that is an interesting move. I mean, I suppose the Warlords are trying to get back here to kill off the trebuchet, but I guess the Cavalry has got very limited utility at this point in the battle anyway. But the Merc Cavalry wasn't really going to be able to get a huge amount of kills, but even so, not a lot in terms of anti-cavalry. The Halberdiers were on the front line, but they are depleted. The Warlords at this point are surely going to be finished off now that the Haven Guard are there. Everyone's turning around though. There could be another opportunity for the Merc Cavalry. The Black Serpents are there as well, whose charge is a little bit more to be feared than just one of, well, basically the quintessential basic melee cav in the Mercs. Here come the Mercs again though. They will be able to get a rear charge. Good use here of their cavalry from the attackers, considering it was never going to be super useful. I do need to be careful though, because the Mercs are much more likely to break. Here come the Champions of Nafra, so is this where the attackers make their final move? Champions of Nafra will be able to do an awful lot of damage to Tirathea marksmen. Here come the Javelins, so the defenders do still have some skirmish power, and the Javelins potent, killing off the Champions of Nafra. Yeah, I think the defenders are probably going to be able to weather this storm. I don't think the attackers have got the tools left that are going to be necessary to break down the defenders. 2 units of Haven Guard, Javelins, getting a few volleys off into the Champions of Nafra, Talon Knights, the Treb. It's all going to be a bit too much, I think. The attackers very, very depleted. The units they've got are not weak, but they're just not quite as strong as the defending units. The defenders, of course, have got the advantage of fighting downhill as well. I think that's going to be just about that. Up to ×2 speed, because we still have over 10k frames to go, which leads me to believe the attackers are going to try and go wave-based, which is not the right way to do things, really. At this point in time, you'll just allow yourself to get picked off. Go the Haven Guard, the Trebuchet just waiting at the back here. I don't think the Trebuchet is going to be a huge factor in this fight now, to be honest with you. I think it's all going to come down to the melee prowess of Dol Amroth. I don't know if Gondor have actually got anything left, have they? Presumably they've got some depleted unit. Although I'm not entirely sure about that, to be honest with you. There is a green arrow on the radar, so I'd assume there is something that I'm just not seeing. Comes with that one Warlord again, who's proving himself to be a very resilient individual. Let me see. I'm interested to see what that Gondorian is. Am I just blind? I don't know. The Warlords of Umbar getting into the Belfalas Marine. Well, the Warlord of Umbar, singular, getting into the Belfalas Marines. But he's going to be hacked down by the Haven Guard. Here comes the Merc Guildsman trying to crush this initial line. The Cavalry, they're trying to use their Cavalry to its fullest potential, but ultimately it is going to come down to a grindy melee fight, which Dol Amroth just have the better of at this point in time. We are into the final 10k frames, and I think we will leave it on ×2 speed, because this really is going to be all that the battle is now. Here come the attackers, this is it. Throwing everything forwards. Here Here come the other unit of Haven Guard. The Trebuchet going to try and get into position to get some point-blank hits. I mean, it's unfortunate really for the attackers that they can't get in behind the defenders here, because if they could, the Black Serpents could be the sort of thing which turn this battle right on its head. There goes another enemy general. Yeah, morale could be a factor here as time goes on. Fighting uphill into such strong units. The final men from the Umbar and Haradrim may very well break off. Even Umbar, who have got that nice morale, although I think the Abrazani don't count as the Black Numenorian, so I don't think they get a morale. I don't think they've got unbreakable morale, but they still have high morale. The Numenorian Shield Guard and the Naruna Iron Guard on the other hand will probably fight until the bitter end. Trebuchet trying to get into position, not having the easiest time of it, however. But yeah, the elites of Dol Amroth here I think are just going to prove to be too much for the attackers as they continue this assault. Merc Cavalry and the Black Serpent bodyguards just waiting in the back. The crossbow Corsairs still firing. Dol Amroth still their catapult crews and trebuchet crews, all their artillery crews have got the Gondorian model as it stands. I'm actually kind of surprised that they don't have the Dol Amroth Archer model, like the unupgraded model for that, because that would probably fit. There's still a Gondorian alive somewhere. Oh, there he is. It's the banner carrier, a Warden of the White Tower. Gondor's banner still flies in this battle, even if the army is in ruins. And it's a Warden of the White Tower banner carrier as well, so he has got the stats of a Warden of the White Tower. He is charging right in there.
Good tidings. The enemy general lies dead.
Another offensive general. Here is the Warden of the White Tower. He is playing with fire. This could be the end of Gondor. He will surely be overwhelmed at this point, unless he goes unnoticed. I mean, he could be charged. That would be an inglorious end to Gondor's brave performance. Go back up to ×2 speed. I think we can see players now starting to admit defeat. So yeah, the defenders have this one in the bag. Very, very close though, and I hope and pray that with the most recent two battles where the defenders were both outnumbered by 2 armies each time, I hope that this finally puts an end to the nonsense that the attackers always just OP in every sense and the defenders never stand a chance. Here, Dol Amroth are considered to be a weak faction in 0.96 and they were still able to win this fight. And they made a couple of minor errors. I think that the attackers also played into their hands a little bit. But, you know, I would... Of course it won't. I'm sure that there will always be people that will say that, you know, the good factions always need to win, or the game's rubbish and everyone's underpowered and you should nerf the orcs into oblivion so they're worthless. But, you know, again, I tire of seeing comments like that because it, as I've said previously, it does really take a dump on the hard work of the developers. But I would hope that these two most recent fights finally show that that is not the case. Black Serpents trying the cycle charge. They'll get a decent amount of kills actually. But ultimately the Haven Guard. What are the Haven Guard doing? They just need to sort of ball up. As time goes on they're going to try and cycle charge, which, I mean, I suppose it's not beyond the realms of possibility that that actually works, but that was a poor charge though. They stretched the unit along the side of that formation and it's going to allow the Haven Guard to kill off a few more unit models. The hit points are going to be expended as well. The last of the infantry is also falling by the wayside. Umbar starting to waver. And the defenders win on TOL FALAS. How about that? And that's going to be the last of the Umbar infantry. So the last portion of the battlefield is the last portion of the battle, I should say, is essentially going to be how awkward the attackers want to make killing off their cavalry. Because they could make it awkward, but really the onus is on them to attack, as it has always been. So I think it's about time we timed up to ×6 speed, to be honest with you. 64k frames, probably one of the longest battles I've ever done, actually. So yeah, you can see that the onus is on them to attack forwards. It's really just the Haven Guard that are left, and you can see now, very, very close indeed. The Haven Guard just need to sort of keep themselves together. Yeah, there goes the Merc Cavalry routing. I mean, the Serpent Guard are one of the better lances in the game. They could cycle charge, but I think the calibre of the Haven Guard is going to be too much. And I don't think they have the mass in their unit anymore to truly challenge the Haven Guard. If it was still a full unit of Black Serpents against a somewhat tired unit of Haven Guard, might be a little different. The Trebuchet crew, the Talon Knights are still there as well. Very, very close indeed though, within a few percentage points. Here come the Haven Guard once again, taking that full charge from the front. Defeat seems certain, only a military genius could win this battle.
Good tidings.
There goes the general. This is going to be the end, I would suggest. Still a fair few frames though, so maybe the Black Serpents will sort of cycle out and then cycle back in. Shake him, they're going to lose. Hold on. Oh, my bad. Are there still units left alive would be my question. No, that Mumakil won't return. Mumakil can't return from running amok. They're breaking. They are breaking. And they are breaking. So yeah, the Black Serpents are all that remains. And they are going to cycle back in and out. But it's all over at this point. Despite the attackers' best efforts, the defenders are going to be victorious here by a narrow margin. 2 percentage points by the looks of things, very close. And the defenders win a 5v3. A rare beast of a battle indeed. Another player admits defeat. Well played to the defenders. They did very little wrong, to my mind. The attackers played into their hands a little bit, but it's hard to argue that the defenders deserve that with the way they set out. Very much defending from the front, utilising their skirmishers very, very nicely. Gondor and Dol Amroth investing heavily in their archers here, and it paid off very, very nicely. So just a couple of units of Haven Guard, very depleted Talon Knights, and a Trebuchet crew remain. I think as well the Warden of the White Tower fell in battle. So there we go, and that's going to be the end of that.
Victory is ours, but only by a sword's edge.
Very much only by a sword's edge. So, Minhash getting the most kills, I'm not too surprised about that because he held that line for a long time and it was very brutal for the attackers. Steward of Dale getting the most kills for the attackers, possibly because he had the most javelins. A little bit surprised to not see any Corsair Blackguards. There may have been a unit which just got utterly vanquished before I ever saw them. But if that was the case, and I'm just like the Crossbow Corsairs, they should have been saved for later. That could have made all the difference for the attackers here. And again, those Mumakil, if they had managed to engage in melee rather than slowly walking towards the javelins, the attackers probably would have won this. So, let's see what did the damage for Gondor. Wardens of the White Tower, Nimlothian Honor Guard doing very well for themselves. Guards of Osgiliath, the initial assault, did very well. Only 6 on the Fountain Guard because they got dumpstered by the Demons of the Desert. Gondor Infantry doing okay. Let's see how the skirmishers did though, because that was clearly the centre of this Gondorian army. Many of them getting over 100, only the Ramazekal garrison archers failing to get that. And of course, the Rangers getting the most kills here with 316, not as much as we saw the Athala Rangers get yesterday. 233 on the Nimlothians as well. 234, yeah, good spread across the Gondorian army here, honestly. I would suggest possibly that the Nimrodel Rangers from one of the Dol Amroth armies that was up on that hill covering Minhash's front line probably got the most just because of its positioning. But very well played, and I hope everyone enjoyed this. And once again, I hope this finally dispels the rumours, these last 2 battles, that, you know, the defenders are worthless, because when they're outnumbered by 2 armies, you fully expect the attackers to win because they have a big advantage. Here, though, in both cases, the defenders played it very well and were able to weather the storm and win. So it's all about how you play it. And yeah, I do hope you enjoyed a return to TOL FALAS. A big thank you for Captain Gervais for recording this, and I believe it was Froggy who forwarded it to me. So thank you to them. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.